I balanced the camera on top of 3 candles and this can go terribly wrong very quickly. Hello everyone! Today we are going to be discussing the best, the worst, the most disappointing books that I've read so far this year. For 2024, I set the goal of 100 books on Goodreads, and so far, let's check together. So far, I read 70 books. Out of those 70 books, 3 I read this month, in the month of July. So strictly from January until June, which was the mid-year point, I read 67 books, which is a lot, and I kind of have to remember to take some time off also to just decompress and relax a bit, and also to kind of like remind myself that nothing is gonna happen if I don't read for a day. The first question is best books you've read so far in 2024. Also, if you see that I'm looking down here, it's because I have my MacBook here with my notes for this video. So, best book. By far, this is the book that I am constantly thinking about. I don't know what it is. I think it's the setting and the characters. It is just such a joy. This is obviously Olivia Blake's One for My Enemy. I annotated or tabbed, I should say, a lot of this book. Granted, now I don't really remember each color for what was intended because I had like a sticky note in it and I think I lost it because I don't find it anywhere. Also the art, the end papers, let me remove the dust jacket, but the end papers, just so nice, so nice. And we also have here the Fedorov brothers. I think this book is very divisive. You either love it or hate it. I don't think there's an in-between because it's a very specific type of setting and a very specific type of prose that Olivia Blake is kind of known for. I happen to absolutely love Olivia Blake's prose. I think it's really, really well done. She has this elevated way of writing and it definitely can come across a bit sophisticated and elitist. This is inspired, I don't think it's a reimagining, but it is inspired by Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, and you can definitely see the similarities between this and Romeo and Juliet throughout the whole book. This is about two witch families that are rivals. This is set in Manhattan. Yeah, it is set in Manhattan, and you're kind of following the sisters of I think they are the Antonovas. Yes, the Antonova sisters, and also the Fedorov brothers. As I said, they are rivals and they are also witches. So this is the perfect setting. What I really, really liked about how the book is structured is, and I will try to show it to you, you have all of these things that are inspired from the setting of a play. Like you have here the list of characters, which is very, very nice to be included because the name of the characters in this book is a bit messy and I loved every second of it, but it's a bit messy. For example, the matriarch of the Antonova family is Baba Yaga, as she's known in the community, but her real name is Maria Antonova. But Maria Antonova is also the name of her first daughter. So the daughter is also called Maria, but she's not really referred to as Maria in the book. She is Masha and sometimes Mashenka. So it can become confusing very, very fast. It's so well done. It is so well done. It is divided in acts. So we have Act 1 here. We also have some artwork in the typical Olivia Blake fashion. Highly, highly recommend this book. It is just amazing. This is one of my favorites and I'm thinking about it at least once a day. Yellow Face by R.F. Kuang. I don't think this needs any introduction. It is popular for a reason. I highly enjoy this. This is entertaining. It's a train wreck that you can't stop watching. The main character is so flawed and you're kind of rooting for her at some point. Also, this is not a spoiler, but another character in this book dies while eating a pancake and she chokes and she dies, which camp, very camp. Love this one. The next one, it is, first of all, I hope you are able to see all of the details of this cover. It has this like gold foiling and it is just so beautiful. This is The Lost Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chakshi. This was marvelous. It's about these two girls who become friends and kind of explore their interests. It's a coming of age story. Also, it's a commentary on how toxic female friendships can become. It is a bit spooky, dark. It's very short. I think it has, yeah, it's under 300 pages. It has a sentient house, which I love. Now, this is a newer release. It is by Coco Mellers, who also wrote Cleopatra and Frankenstein, which I read half of it last year. I did not finish it, but I really, really want to pick it up later this year to get my thoughts on it. But this new release, Blue Sisters by Coco Mellers, it is absolutely stunning. First of all, look at the cover. Beautiful. I got the sprayed edge version of this. It is signed by Coco Mellers, which is really cool. I pre-ordered this and this is the first edition. It's such a joy to have like a signed copy of one of your favorite books. In true Coco Mellers fashion, this is a lit fic that explores just life in general, relationships, grief. This is about four sisters and the plot explores the grieving process. It is the 1 year anniversary of their sister's death. And it's kind of exploring how each of the sisters are dealing with their emotions, with unprocessed trauma from their childhood. I just think it's a really breathtaking read. This is split in POVs. So you have POVs from the three sisters. Each chapter is a different POV. Usually with books that are split in POV, you end up liking one POV more than the other ones, but I feel like this is really well balanced. This is Blue Sisters by Coco Mellers. Another one of my favorites, this might be a recency bias, but it is The Invocations by Crystal Sutherland. This is gothic, this is gory, this is adult. It has some pretty graphic scenes and I would recommend checking the trigger warnings for this one. This is about witches who have to team up together to uncover this murder mystery that is happening in their city. There's a murderer on the loose who's just hunting down other witches and we don't really know why, and we are set on this journey. I liked all of the gore elements in this one. I thought they were really well done. Some people might get grossed out by the very graphic scenes, but I enjoyed this a lot. The dedication for this book, let me find it. It says, "For all the angry girls." So if this doesn't convince you to read this, I don't know what will. Last, but definitely not least, in this category, we have a newer release as well. This is When Among Crows by Veronica Roth, who also wrote the Divergent series, which I have not read, but somehow I know everything about. Also, this has sprayed edges. They are yellow and a dagger on the actual hardcover of it, which is really cool. This is inspired mostly by Polish folklore, which I really appreciated because I feel like, at least in the European space, this kind of like folk stories are circling around. There's a point where they are circulated all throughout Europe, and I remember my grandma telling me some of the tales that this is inspired from, which I found endearing. My only complaint, I mean, not really complaint, but my only wish for this book would be to be a bit longer, because I definitely felt like we could explore more. This is only 169 pages, and I don't say this about a lot of books. In fact, I think a lot of books should be shorter, but this, I wish it would have been longer, because I feel like we kind of rushed through the action. This is also an urban fantasy, and it is set up in Chicago. We have a lot of magical creatures. We have clubs that are transformed in fight clubs and all of that jazz, and we are set on this mission. I will say though, the reveal or the thing that's going to happen in the end, if you're paying attention from like the first couple of pages, you can kind of see where it goes, but it doesn't matter because it was still endearing to read. So yeah, this is Veronica Roth's When Among Crows. Next up, we have Best Sequel You've Read So Far in 2024. And I have a couple of them here. I have not read that many series, I feel like, this year. Granted, I finished Throne of Glass in 14 days and I was not okay afterwards, so I don't know what that says about me. But my favorite, I think it's a tie between this one, which is The Wicked King by Holly Black, and the next one, which is Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. I finally read the Folk of the Air trilogy, and I think this book was my favorite out of all of them. I say this because I gave this a 5-star on Goodreads. Do I remember anything that's happening in this book? Absolutely not. I feel like this thing is happening mostly when I'm reading series back to back. After a while, all of the plot is kind of like mushed together, and you remember the main gist of things, but you don't remember specifically what happens in each book from that series. So this is kind of what's happening here. I do remember though that I like this one better than the first one, because with the first one I had like a really tough time probably for the first half of The Cruel Prince, and then picking up this one right after felt like I already know what's happening. This was really fun to read. It's definitely on the YA side, but it was really, really, really good. This is The Wicked King by Holly Black. Next up, this is going to be, well, I'm sorry, but the ending of this is in this video only because of the ending. Sarah, what did you do to us, Sarah? This is the second book in the Crescent City, I guess trilogy, but potentially series. I don't know what a series of 4 books is called. I think it's a quartet. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. Only because of the ending of this book, it has to be in here. The book that I already told you that is going to be in this category, which is the best sequels that I read in 2024. It is none other than Crooked Kingdom. Just look how stunning this cover is. And in the sun, oh my god. Oh my god. I love gold foiling so much. This is the second book in the Six of Crows duology. This is a duology about a heist, about a team of people who are outcasts, and they come along for this epic mission that they have to achieve. It's believed to be impossible what they are set up to do, but it's not, because Kaz Brecker is a mastermind. Stream Mastermind by Taylor Swift. Crooked Kingdom was a joy. The next category on the list is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I don't have a lot of anticipated releases, but I do have one book that I wanted to include here, and that is Intermezzo by Intermezzo or Intermezzo. I think it's Intermezzo, but I'm not really sure, by Sally Rooney. I am really excited for Intermezzo because the blurb of this just sounds amazing, and I will try to read it from Goodreads. So it says, a moving story about grief, love, and family from the global phenomenon Sally Rooney. Aside from the fact that they are brothers, Peter and Ivan Quebec, I guess, seem to have little in common. Peter is a Dublin lawyer in his 30s, successful, competent, and apparently unassailable. But in the wake of their father's death, he's medicating himself to sleep and struggling to manage his relationships with two very different women. His enduring first love, Sylvia, and Naomi, a college student for whom life is one long joke. Girl, say. Ivan is a 22-year-old competitive chess player. He has always seen himself as socially awkward, a loner, the antithesis of his glib elder brother. Now, in the early weeks of his bereavement, Ivan meets Margaret, an older woman emerging from her own turbulent past, and their lives become rapidly and intensely intertwined. This sounds amazing. This is set up to release on September 24th, so still a long way to go until September. Next up, we have Biggest Disappointment. The first disappointment, which is Cursed Bread by Sophie McIntosh. I liked the writing in this one. I liked it a lot. It just feels very cinematic and it gives you that feeling of like eeriness, but in a good way. My problem though is with the plot because it's mostly not there, or I was not able to appreciate it as much as other people do. I just didn't connect with this one. Let me read you the blurb for this one because it sounds really good. Spring 1951. Four people meet in a small French town. The baker and his wife, the ambassador and his wife. Two belong to the town, two are outsiders. Sometime later, strange things start happening. Horses drop dead in the fields. Children grow wild. Ghosts are sighted after dark. Someone is playing a dangerous game of cat and mouse. But who is the predator and who their prey? This sounds absolutely amazing, but unfortunately it was not one of my favorites. Next up, we have Send Nudes by Saba Sams. Did I pick this up because of the title? Absolutely. My issue with this is that this is a short story collection, and in general with short stories I feel like we are able to like some of them more than the other ones, which, you know, it's fine, but the majority of the stories in this one felt a bit like they're lacking the meat and potatoes. Is that a saying, or did I make it up? It just lacks the substance. Also, the short story that gives the title of this book was kind of lackluster. I don't know. This was a disappointment, which is fitting for this category. Can you see that I am the victim of pretty covers? Look at this. Look at this. This is absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. This just feels like it's missing something, and I think it is depth, because there are so many opportunities for this to go in a certain direction and it never does. When you fall asleep as a human in our world, you go to this store and you are able to buy or to order your dream that you want to dream that night. It sounds really good, but it just felt a bit boring at times, and as I said, it didn't go anywhere. There are certain parts where I started to tear up a bit in the end, but I cannot tell you what it was without giving you a major spoiler for this one, so I will not do that. Kind of lackluster and disappointing. This is Dollar God Dream Department Store, or DDDS, how I like to call it. This book got me so mad. A lot of people were raving about this book and how good it is, and I just don't get it. I don't see it. This is almost 250 pages of absolutely nothing. Another thing that drives me insane, there are a lot of words that are capitalized and they should not be capitalized. The Northern Hall, the wall is capitalized. The woman, the Western Hall, drowned holes, floors, window, domain. I could go on and on. No, it's a no for me. Last but not least in this list of disappointments, it is The Invisible Life of Eddie LaRue by V. Schwab. Now, did I enjoy this book? Yes, but this is 500 and something, 540 pages, and I do believe that if this book would have been 300 pages only, I would enjoy this so much more. It just feels like it drags like on and on and on and nothing is really happening. And I get that this is kind of the point to feel the angst and the frustration of the main character, but it just went on a bit too much. This is about a girl who makes a deal with the devil and she has eternity, but she is forgotten. Every single time she talks to someone after she leaves, they will forget her and her existence. Also, the end papers for this are just so cool. Not one of my favorites, but this is not a bad book. I like V. Schwab's writing style. It just needed to be edited and a lot of scenes edited out. Next up, biggest surprise. Violet Bang Backwards Over the Grass by the one and only Lana Del Rey. The cover of this, this is the dust jacket, and the cover underneath, it's the same thing, the same print, which I think is so cool. Why is this a surprise? It's because I expected this to be an art book with some poetry in it, but it's not. It is poetry and art in equal amounts. And obviously Lana is a great lyricist. She has one of the most beautiful and ethereal and magical songs that I've ever heard. Her pen game is pen gaming. It has pictures that are accompanying the book. This is very like 2012 Tumblr aesthetic, which I do appreciate because Tumblr raised me. There are some haikus at the end which are hit or miss, but the poetry part is just stunning. Lyrically, visually, I would suggest that if you pick up this book and read it, this is intended to be read out loud. The words just have almost like a melody to them when you read them, which is so fascinating. Yeah, I was pumped about this, and Lana doesn't disappoint. Lana doesn't disappoint. So this is Violet Band Backwards Over the Grass. Another surprise kind of for this year. How do I say this? The Infernal Devices by Cassie Clare. Now listen, am I familiar with the Shadowhunter world? Yes. I remember the Mortal Instruments and the famous plotline from the first books that's very questionable, but also kind of enjoyable. And I've heard a lot of people saying that the Infernal Devices is like far superior to the Mortal Instruments. And earlier this year, I picked up the digital copy of Clockwork. I think the first one is Clockwork Angel. It's Clockwork Angel, Clockwork Prince, and Clockwork Princess. I've only read the first one, and I see why it's so many people's favorite. I almost thought it's not gonna hold up to 2024 standards, but it was so enjoyable to read. It is obviously set in the Shadowhunter world in the Victorian London, I want to say, although I don't remember exactly, so don't quote me on that. The atmosphere, the tension between the characters, the triangle of it all, so good. So good. Favorite new to me author? Can you guess? Can you guess? It is Olivia Blake, obviously. I think this prompt was favorite new author, like a debut or something like that, but I couldn't think of anything, so I just put my own spin to it. I still have the, what are they called? The Atlas 6, the Atlas Paradox, and the Atlas Complex to start. I'll see if I will read them by the end of the year, but I read these books by Olivia Blake, and we already talked about One for My Enemy. You don't need me rambling again about it. But then I read Alone with You in the Ether, also by Olivia Blake, which is like a lit-ficky story about love. Highly, highly recommend. Also, with this book, I underlined a lot of things, like a lot of things. This is just like an example. Yeah, this was a very, very introspective way of discussing about love, about life, about mental health, and about the patterns that we have and kind of how to break them. Also, bees. I feel like I've read a couple of books about bees this year, which is kind of a random trend, but the more you know about bees. And also by Olivia Blake, I recently read Masters of Death. I will take a second to just appreciate the end papers of this book. Stunning. This is a very campy book about a real estate agent who's also a vampire, and she's teaming up with this guy named Fox. She's teaming up with Fox to help her get rid of this ghost that inhabits one of the houses that she's trying to sell. And I will have to check the blurb if this is a spoiler. No, it's not, because it says right here. Fox is the nephew of Death, which is kind of random, but also highly enjoyable. And it's full of things that don't necessarily make sense. It's kind of absurd in the best way possible. This is Masters of Death by none other than Olivia Blake. Newest favorite characters. My newest favorite characters are none other than the stars of Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows, which are Iris and Roman. Look at me forgetting the name of the characters from one of my favorite duologies. Yes, Roman. Iris and Roman. This duology was all over Book Talk, TikTok. I feel like it's a very good starting point if you want to read fantasy but you're kind of afraid. This doesn't read as fantasy, and I feel like that's why a lot of people like these books that are not normally fantasy readers. It's because these are reading like lit fic with a magical realism aspect to the plot and the story. So if you don't know, in this world, it's the normal world, but it has this layer of magic. We don't really know a lot of the magic system in the first book. In the second book, it's explained more in detail, and this is why out of the two, Ruthless Vows is my favorite. You have these academic rivals who are competing for a job at the local newspaper, and they have magical typewriters, and yeah, they communicate through magical typewriters, which is the whole vibe. If you've seen the Fortnite music video, Taylor Swift featuring Post Malone, it's basically the plot of the first book. These are the UK editions, and they have typewriters in gold foiling. This is Dear Iris on the first one, and then on the second one we have Dear Roman, which is very fitting for the plot of the story. Look at that. Books that made you cry. The first one, this is a Romanian author. This is Maria Orban, and the name of the book is Toată dragostea dintr-o fotografie arsă, which would translate to All the Love from a Burned Photograph. This is about three generations of women. The main characters struggle with familial relationships, with being an adult and feeling like your life is falling apart, struggling to understand her daughter and what she's going through, but in the same time having a rocky relationship with her mother, and the feelings that are emerging from that. It is sad, it is heartbreaking, but it is also a very beautiful story that needed to be told. So this would be Toată dragostea dintr-o fotografie arsă by Maria Orban. This is the Romanian translation of Lie With Me by Felipe Besson. This is called in Romanian Încetează cu minciunile tale, which I think is a motamo translation of the French title. Yes, the French title is Arrête avec tes mensonges, which basically would translate to Stop with your lies. This was just sad and marvelous and kind of like a tearjerker. It is about this author who is coming to terms with his sexuality and exploring his past. The next book, which is Swimming in the Dark by Tomasz Jodorowsky. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. This is a story set in Poland in the 1980s. It is exploring communism in Poland and how hard and hopeless the life seemed at that specific moment in time. It is also about the characters coming of age and kind of realizing who they are and not settling for less, which I think it's a very important lesson that this book is trying to teach us. Another thing that I quite enjoyed about this story is that it's paying homage to Giovanni's Room, which is a book that also made me cry that I read last year. This is Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin, and it is referenced multiple times in this book. Next up in this category, we have Family Meal by Brian Washington. This was so well done in my opinion. You have multiple POVs, struggles, and just finding your people, found family, trying to understand who you are and coming to terms with that. You are following the main character, or one of the main characters, who recently lost their boyfriend, but you don't really know why or how it happened, and he's obviously in a very poor mental state. It is definitely a very emotional story about queerness and race and just society. This is Family Meal by Brian Washington. Okay, now that we talked about sad books, let's talk about something that's, on a happier note, let's say, and that would be most beautiful books you've bought so far this year or that you have received. I don't know if I can include all of them. Oh my god. This is a big stack. I will start with the reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson, Sprayed Edges. This is a first edition. I think this is the UK version. It has like a print on the actual hardcover, and it says special first edition there. Also by Holly Jackson, we have the collector's edition of the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. I think the last one is going to come up later this year, but I have the first one, which is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. Also, Sprayed Edges, stunning. And the second one in the series, which is Good Girl, Bad Blood. Again, foiling on the actual hardcover, and these headphones as sprayed edges. I had to include Hofaz in this portion of the video because look at this cover and the crescent moon that's reflecting the light. Very pretty. The end papers have the same design as the dust jacket, which is really pretty. We have Fathom Folk by Eliza Chan. I don't know what this book is about. I picked it up because of the cover. Next up, we have Evocation by S.T. Gibson. I have not read any S.T. Gibson books so far, but I've been hearing a lot of things about Evocation, and I decided to pick it up. This is the first edition as well. This is the UK edition, and it has this silver foiling on it. And last but not least, I have the Pomegranate Gate, gorgeous design and also gorgeous sprayed edges. The last question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? As you can see here, I have a lot of books that are behind me on the bookshelves, and probably 30% of them are not read. So you know, it is what it is at this point. We are starting off with Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor. This is the continuation of Strange the Dreamer. This is a duology, and this is the second book in that duology. I've been postponing reading this book, and I don't know why, because I enjoyed reading Strange the Dreamer, and I have to see how the story continues in this book. She is shiny for the gods. Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies and Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands by Heather Fawcett. I don't know if this is confirmed, if this is a duology or a third book is coming up. I think it might be. I'm not really sure. But I've been hearing a lot of good things about these books, and as a child who was a big fan of the Spiderwick Chronicles, I really want to read these at some point this year. I think Leonie from the book Leo mentioned that they're very like Spiderwick-esque. They're giving kind of the same vibes, so I am really excited to read these. We Hunt the Flame and We Free the Stars by Hafsa Faisal. I want to read this duology because I am currently reading A Tempest of Tea by the same author, and there are certain references of the world in these books, but because I have not read them, I'm, not really connecting with the characters that much, and maybe if I would have read these previously to starting A Tempest of Tea, I would feel otherwise about that book. I've heard nothing but really good things about these books, so I want to give them a go by the end of the year. Slight tangent, but do you see this? It's a duology, but the books are not the same size, and honestly, it's driving me insane. Why are publishers doing this? I don't understand. This has been on my TBR for the longest time, and I am so intimidated to start reading it. Maybe because of its thickness and size. I've been hearing nothing but praises for Babel by R.F. Kuang. I have to read it at this point. It is about languages and translations, and as someone who has studied foreign languages at the university, I think this is going to be right up my alley, but I just need to gather my courage and strength to be there mentally to start reading this, because I know I will enjoy it. We are almost there, I promise. I know, this is shocking. I have not read Fourth Wing yet, and I have this kind of special edition sprayed edges. I don't think it has anything on the cover, no. I picked this up earlier this year, and I still have not started reading it, and at this point, I just wanna know what all the fuss is about, because I feel like everyone has read this book, everyone but me. The Last physical book. This is Cassandra Clare's Sword Catcher, and again, the sheer size of this is kind of intimidating. I picked this up on release day, and I have not touched it since, so hopefully I will read it. In terms of ebooks that I have and that I want to get to by the end of the year, the Infernal Devices series, I read only the first one, which is Clockwork Angel, and I have to read also the Clockwork Prince and Clockwork Princess to finish the series. Also the continuation of the Finlay Donovan series. It's the fourth book. I think it's Finlay Donovan Rolls the Dice. I was a big fan of the Finlay Donovan series, of the first two books, at least last year, and I want to see how the story continues or ends, because I'm not sure if this is the final book in that series or not. We are finally here at the end of this video. We have finished with my mid-year freakout tag. Comment down below your favorite book that you have read so far this year. I would like to know that. If you enjoyed this video, this is a new channel. This is something new for me with video content, so I would appreciate if you would like, if you would subscribe, if you want to. If you don't want to, that's totally fine. Thanks for watching, and hopefully see you soon somewhere on the internet, I guess.